This build's insane for Season 10. Ravens were massively buffed due to the Chaos perks, which allow us to use them as a core skill. Not only that, but companions have been consistently buffed over the last several seasons. So when all is said and done, it's a lot of power. You'll be able to run through enemies spamming Ravens constantly, and the little AoE circles will sit there and deal damage. You'll very easily be clearing over pit 100, and likely many pit tiers past that. But it's not just good for pit pushing, this is also going to do really well in Infernal Hordes, which is extremely important in this season. So sit back, relax, put me on your other monitor if you want to. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me break the build down for you. If you want to follow along with the build, make sure you click on the link underneath the video. So first let me explain some of the interactions in the build. Our focus is on the Raven's Companion. We're using the Savagery Chaos perk in order to use it as a core skill, and that's going to allow us to use several different things that are core related. For example, Purge the Infected is poisoning enemies, and that part is core specific, but it's also doing other stuff like giving us guaranteed critical strikes and increased damage, which works for any skill. We're also using Power Siphon, which is another 100% more damage. And then we're using other things like Retaliation, which is just a bunch of damage, and you wouldn't otherwise be able to use this. We're also using the new unique called Kill to Blackwing, and this specifically talks to Ravens and increases its damage by quite a bit, but it also makes additional Ravens attack, so it's just more DPS all around. We're using the Stormcrow's aspect, which not only is increasing the damage of Ravens, but it's also making it into a storm skill that does lightning damage. That opens up a whole bunch more damage and utility that we can use in the build. And then we're using the combination of Shepherd's aspect and Stampede, not to mention our Keystone passive, which also increases the number of companions we have. And we're using the Serun, which is even more companions. All of those companions stack up and make our shepherds do way more damage. And then, because our ravens are storm skills, we're using Gathlin's Birthright. This is making it so that when we do storm skill damage, we're able to proc 2 other keystone passives. So now we're gonna have 3 keystone passives instead of 1. And then the last big thing that I should probably talk about is we're using the Zon rune. This is allowing us to use overpower bonuses, which we normally wouldn't have in this build. And because we're using Fists of Fate on our armor, we're getting way more lucky hit chance than normal, so we're going to be activating the Ahu rune more than normal. So when all is said and done, this translates into a lot more damage. So for the skills, Ravens is our main damage source. Cataclysm is mostly there to give us guaranteed spirit using Mjolnir Ring, but our Cataclysm is also going to do a decent amount of damage, especially to weaker enemies, because we're building around storm skills as part of our Ravens, so we're buffing this with about half of our kit. So this won't do much in higher pits, but it'll definitely be good for Torment 4 content. Then we have our Wolves and our Poison Creeper. These are mostly just in the build for passive damage increases to Shepherds, so don't stress about those too much. And if you wanted to, you could pull out Poison Creeper for something more defensive. Then we're using Debilitating Roar to reduce enemy damage and increase our damage. And then I have Earth Spike in the build, and this is mostly due to Gathlin's Birthright. We probably won't be using this too much, but with our high lucky hit chance, the plan is that we can use Earth Spike occasionally to activate our Earth and Might Keystone passive, because that's an extra 75% multiplicative damage. So basically doubling your damage just by dropping a few of these until you trigger that. But I'll have to see how this works in practice and if it actually feels like it's worth it. For our Spirit Boons, we're going with Gift of the Stag for Spirit, Iron Feather for Life, Avian Wrath for critical damage, Energize for more Spirit, and this is important because we're using our Overabundance perk, and this is 300% more damage as long as we generate enough Spirit, so very important. Then we're using Calm Before the Storm to make sure that we've got our ultimate up all the time. Now before I go through the endgame setup, I'm actually going to cover the mid-game setup. Especially this early in the season, most people are going to be going for this. So in this setup, for the chest piece, we're going with Spirit Bond. This is going to give us some damage reduction and make sure our companions can't die. We're going to use Brawlers on the gloves, and that's going to increase our damage and also give more damage to our ultimate, but also reduce our ultimate's cooldown. I'm recommending Tassets of Dawning Sky. This is just one of those items if you happen to get it as a drop. It's a nice stat stick for resistances, not to mention the movement speed is really nice early on. So definitely use this if you find it. But if you don't, a nice pair of legendary pants with an all resist roll, a total armor temper, and a defensive legendary aspect is going to be good. We're using Rushing Wilds in our boots to make sure we can get more movement speed, and everything else is going to be the same as the endgame setup. Now let me go through the endgame one. We've got Gathlin's Birthright, and we already talked about this, but keep in mind that this is a human form item. So we're getting a lot of bonuses from human that we wouldn't normally get, and they buffed these over the last couple seasons, so pretty good. Shroud of False Death is giving us +1 to all of our passives in our skill tree, so that's a lot of different damage, especially since we're turning our ravens into storm skills, which means even more from this. Mjolnir Ring is not only giving us the unlimited spirit with Cataclysm, but it's also extending the duration of Cataclysm, which is pretty important to make sure we keep it up. Fists of Fate not only gives the lucky hit chance, but also gives us a big damage multiplier. And by the way, if I didn't mention it before, Chaos Armor is the seasonal thing, which is why we're able to put these items into weird slots. Then we've got Kill to Blackwing on our boots, which I pretty much already covered. Shepherd's Aspect on the weapon, Stormcrows on the amulet, Retaliation on ring 1, and Stampede on ring 2. If you want to see the detailed stat breakdowns, you can click on the Gear Stats tab and scroll through these, and I've got them all marked out for which ones you want the greater affixes in, which is the little yellow stars next to them, and anything orange is what I'm intending your masterwork bonuses to go into. For the runes, I'm recommending Nagu and Se. This one's kind of funny because it actually works with itself. So the more summons we maintain, the more offerings we're getting from this, and then that's creating more summons for us. Then our Ahu and our Zan, which is basically just a lucky hit chance on non-healthy enemies to get overpowers. The critical strike chance here doesn't actually matter because we're getting guaranteed crits from our Purge the Infected. Speaking of chaos perks, we're running Savagery, which is not only making our companions into core skills, but also giving them 80% more damage, so that's really nice. Overabundance for that damage, Purge the Infected for the damage and guaranteed crits, and Power Siphon for the damage. Keep in mind that you don't want to be using Power Siphon until after you've gotten your Mjolnir and Cataclysm setup going, because this is going to be dropping your maximum spirit, and if you don't have enough spirit, you can't cast your skills. But that's not a problem with the Mjolnir Ring and Cataclysm combo. For our gems, we're running Sapphire on the armor, and then for the accessories, Diamond or Skull depending on what you need, whether it be armor or resistances. If you go to the written guide in the link below, you can look for my gameplay loop, how it works, specifics about Mercenaries, attack speed breakdown, change log, whatever you guys need. For the skill tree, I'm just going to mention what I think is important, because I think I pretty much covered everything from what I was saying already. But basically, we're dumping almost everything into our companion tree, maxing out our ravens, and we're just getting 1 point in our poison creeper and wolves, just to make sure that we have them on our bar. Keep in mind that our ravens is now lightning, so we can use electric shock for more damage. And we're maxing out Cataclysm to make sure the cooldown's as low as possible. That's about it. For our Paragon boards, we're going to be using the Keeper Glyph on our starter board, and that works for non-physical damage, so because we're changing our Ravens over to lightning damage, that works for it. Then we're moving up, and we're putting on the Ancestral Guidance board, and here we're using the Dominate Glyph, since we're getting those overpowers. To left from here, we're moving over and grabbing our Thunderstruck board, and here we're going with Earth and Sky. Keep in mind that you don't need these critical strike nodes whenever you actually get your seasonal power, so those can be dropped off. Moving down from there, we've got the Heightened Malice board, and here we're using the Spirit Glyph. And finally from there, we're moving left, and we're putting our Untamed board, and here we're using the Wilds Glyph. Now the Wilds Glyph is one of your strongest glyphs, so you're going to want to use this earlier on in the board, and then you can move it here once you actually have your full boards put together. For Mercenaries, it's going to be my pretty typical setup. For here, we go down the side to get more resistances. You can go for the other side for more armor if you need to, which would take you down to the Mocking Lure, but I almost always end up going with this side. And then for reinforcement, I like Variana, just to get a little more attack speed from Bloodthirst. And that's going to be it for this build. I still need to get hands-on with this build, and I'll be refining it and getting any of the tweaks out of it, but this should be extremely strong and reliable as it is. So I hope you guys enjoyed the build, and make sure you guys let me know down below what you want to see next. I just started doing Torment 4 for Season 10, so I'm almost to the point that I can start putting out some videos for you guys with actual live content. But either way, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Daddy Druid out.
Subscribe to Scream Heart. He's more than an old fart. He makes lots of fun builds. I promise his streams chill. He should probably be faster. Come watch this disaster.